Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 2 of my Django video tutorial. In this part of the tutorial, we're going to talk about MVC, or Model View Controller. I'm going to show you how to connect URLs to functions. We're going to play around in the settings area for Django. We're going to set up SQLite. And then we're going to move on to the example polls example that is on the Django website, and a whole bunch more. I'm going to be using PyCharm in this tutorial, and if you don't know how to set that up, I have a link in the tutorial in my Learn to Program series at the 37-minute mark. I show you how to set up PyCharm, and of course that link is in the description, as well as all of the code, as well as a cheat sheet and a transcript of this entire video is also in the description. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Alright, after telling so many people to do so many different things, I've probably lost half my viewership, but whatever, we'll continue. Alright, so everything here is going to work exactly the same on Windows as well as on Macintosh. Right here I have PyCharm, over here I have Google Chrome, you can use any browser you want, and down here I have a terminal. And of course on Windows that would be your command prompt. So the very first thing I'm going to do, and it's very important to put this in the right place, is I am going to create our polls app that we're going to actually be doing here in a little bit, but I want to get this out of the way. So you're going to want to make sure, where in the last tutorial we created sample site, so you want to make sure that you are going to create this where manage.py is located, as well as sample site. And then you are either going to type in Python 3, more than likely if you're on a Mac, or just Python if you're on Windows. And then you're going to call manage.py, start, app, and polls. And hit enter, and it'll create all that stuff for you. If you hit ls, now you see polls here, and if you change to the polls directory, and you would do dir if you're on Windows instead of ls, and there you can see everything's all set up. You're also going to see that hopefully this has been updated. Yes, it has. It has been updated inside of PyCharm. So here are going to be all the files we are going to be playing around with. Now the very first thing, well, I probably should talk about Model View Controller. If you're here, you probably have heard of it already, but basically the model is going to act as the interface to your data. The view is going to be the interface that the users see, and the controller is going to pass information between both of them. And I'm going to show you a whole bunch of examples of how that works. I'm going to start off here simple, and then I'll get into more complicated things as the tutorial continues. Now the very first thing I'm going to do, and make sure you open this in the right place, you're going to go to sample site, and you're going to go new, file, and you're going to go views.py, and you're going to create that file. Now, this isn't the normal way we work with Django, but I'm going to do it this way just to try to simplify the whole idea of Model View Controller and how it works out for us. So basically, inside of here, I am going to start off by going from Django. And I'm sorry if some people think I'm pronouncing Django wrong. I think it's my accent. It's Django, but sometimes it sort of sounds weird because I have a strange accent. So HTTP response, and there we are. And we're going to be using this guy to pass information back to our view. So this is going to be a way of responding whenever a function is called. This is how we're going to pass information back to the view so that it is displayed, and I just deleted it. Alright, so there we are. Then I'm going to do something with random numbers here in a little bit, so I'm going to import the random module as well. And then I'm going to create our very first view function, which is going to receive information whenever it is called. And I am going to start off simple here, and I'm going to create hello world, and it is going to get a request from our view, and then it is going to return a response using HTTP response. So I'm just going to keep this really simple and go HTTP response like that. And I'm going to then say hello world. And that is all that I'm going to need to do for our view function that we have right here. So I'm going to save that guy. And then I'm going to open up urls.py again in the sample site area. So just open this guy up, and there's a whole bunch of mess inside here, but I'll explain exactly what's going on here as we continue. And it's going to import some different things here. Basically, if you want to know what these imports do, this very first one, meaning URL, is going to match the URL in the browser to a module in your Django project. and then admin is going to load URLs for our administration site. We'll get more into that in the next part of the tutorial. I am then going to have to load in my functions that I created. Well, I created the hello world function here first. So I'm just going to go sample site and views and then import and type in hello world. And that is the guy that we just created here a moment ago. This guy over here. That's hello world. That's what I'm referencing. And then we get down into this guy right here. Now this is basically going to list all of the URLs that we want to tie to specific functions. So what I'm going to do here first is add the directory in the URL that's going to be tied to my hello world function. And if you're wondering what this guy means, basically whenever we have an R here, this is a regular expression what we're creating here. And if you haven't watched that in my Learn to Program series, I talk about regular expressions, but I'm going to cover it here as well. The R basically means that we want to treat this like a raw string that is going to allow us to include backslashes so that we won't have any issues with that. And then inside of these quotes that we have right here, we're going to define a regular expression where this caret symbol right here is going to represent the beginning of the string. And then after that, we have admin. That's going to reference the administration part of Django that's built directly inside of Django. And then sometimes you'll also see a $sign right there. The $sign represents the end of the string. So basically what we're trying to match is at the end of localhost :8000, and then there's going to be a /. We're trying to match admin right there, and if admin is called, then we are going to call for the administration version of Django to be loaded into the browser. But that's a little bit complicated. So what I'm going to instead do is just load hello world in here so you can see a more simplistic example. So I'm going to say URL R. This is going to be a raw string once again, so we don't have to worry about backslashes and // and all that stuff. Then we're going to put a caret symbol, which is going to represent the beginning of the directory we're calling up inside of our browser. Then we're going to call for hello world, and I'm just going to go hello world like that. And then we'll have a /, and then we'll have the $sign, which ends the string. And basically what we're going to say now is anytime somebody goes to this specific directory inside of our local host, that we want to call for our hello world function to be called. And of course that is going to return the text that says hello world. So pretty simple stuff. And that's all that we need to do with that guy. So we can save that. Now we can jump back over here and let's make sure we are in the correct directory. We want to be in the directory that has manage py inside of it, and we want to run our server this time. So once again, on Mac, you're going to type Python 3 more than likely, and if you are on a Windows-based machine, you're probably going to just type Python. And then we're going to say run server, and we will run that, and there we go. And then we'll just come over here to localhost, and if we run that, you're going to see that that is giving us an error message right now. Let's go inside of here instead, and we'll type in hello world like that and run it, and you can see hello world pops up inside of there. All right, so that is a really simple example, and we'll get into more complicated things here as we continue. So let's say that we want to instead interact a little bit more with the user. We're going to create another function inside of here. And basically what this is going to do, why don't we go and create our root part of our site as well so we don't get that 404 error anymore. So we're going to say root page, and we'll say request inside of there just like we did previously. And here we are just going to return same exact thing. We're going to return some text inside of here and root homepage. And save that, and then jump over into our URL section and tie in a new URL. So we'll just go like this, colon, and caret symbol for the beginning of that guy. And here we're just going to basically say that this is going to be nothing. So we're just going to say that the string basically doesn't exist. There's nothing there. And here we will say that we want to call our root page function whenever that is set up. And of course we're going to have to, you can see over here it's saying root page is not defined. Well, we'll just come over here and go root page like that, and now everything's wonderful. And if we now come in here and we change our URL to just basic localhost :8000 like that and run it, you can see root homepage pops up. Okay, so that's how simple that is. Let's create some more. All right, so now we're going to do something, like I said, a little bit more complicated. We're going to receive a number passed into our URL, and then we are going to return a random number. So we're going to say random number is going to be the name of this, and we have to put the request in there just like always. And we're also going to say that we're going to receive a max random number that the user wants sent to us, or by default we're going to use 100. Now what I want to do is calculate a random number between 0 and the number passed, or if they didn't pass anything, well then in that situation I want to instead use the 100. So to generate a random function, we go random and random range and 0, and I need to convert that from a string into a integer. And then let's go and place our string and the random number inside of a message that we will then send back to the browser window. So I'm just going to go message, and I'll say random number between 0, and we will go and get our string that was passed in as the maximum, and then I will output on the screen a random number. Then after that, put our %, and we will get our different values. So we'll go max random as well as random number, or random num. And let's change this to random num as well, so we don't have confusion about the name of the function and the other thing like that. Okay, and then we will just say return, once again, HTTP response, and here we will send back our message. Now what this is going to allow us to do, well, we'll save that. We'll first have to jump into URLs once again, and we'll have to create a new one here. Make sure you put that little comma inside of there, and you might as well put the comma inside of there right there as well. And now what we're going to do is inside of this guy, we're going to say random, and we're going to put another /, and then inside of this we're going to expect the user to send us a decimal or a digit that's going to represent the maximum value. And if you want to pass a value to our random function, this guy over here, we want max random, what we're going to do is just put it in between parentheses like that, and that will pass that digit automatically for us. So that's pretty cool. Then we'll put another / inside of there, and then we will call our actual function that we use. So we'll say random number. That is the guy we have, and of course we have to come up here, otherwise it's going to give us an error, and we'll say random number to pull that in from our views directory. And if we save that and we come over here, let's go down here, make sure we got random. All right, so that's what we want to do. And here we will start off saying random, and then we'll say something like 1000. Hit enter, and you can see that it generated a random number between 0 and 1000. So we know all that went through and it created it. All right, so that's one way we can do something a little bit more interactive inside of here. So pretty cool stuff. And now we'll jump over into our settings folder, which is right here. So let's open up settings and we'll talk about some stuff here. There's a whole bunch of different things we have right here, but I'm going to come down here to where we have installed apps. Now this guy right here is going to represent the Django Admin system, which we'll get more into that later, and we'll get into all these things in detail later. I'm just going to briefly cover them right here. This is the authentication system. This guy is going to be a framework for content types. Once again, more into that later. This is our session framework. Well, more later. This is our message framework, and this is a reference to static files that we have inside of our web application. And then the last thing I want to do, we're going to come back to settings here later on when we set up the polls app, but I want to come down here where we have our time zone, and I want to set that up. Now, if you want to find out what your time zone is, you can go to wikipedia.org, wiki list of TZ database time zones, and you can find this link in the description. All right, and we're going to come here, and I'm going to look for my specific time zone just to keep this simple. Let's just go New York, and America and New York pops up right there. And of course, you would select whatever you wanted to use and copy that guy, and then come down here in the time zone area and paste that inside of there. And then the last thing I want to do is set up the path for my static files. And to do that, I'm going to say static _ root is equal to, and everybody should do the same thing here that I'm doing right now, because this is how we're going to set up our poll app and our other things that we're going to do later. And we're going to say join and base directory and static. So that's all we're going to do with settings for now, but we're going to get back into that here very soon. And if you didn't see it, because I scrolled pause the screen, there it is right there. That's exactly what you're going to type in. And now we're going to go in and start creating views for our poll application. And to do that, we're going to go into the polls directory. Make sure you're in the right directory. And specifically, you're going to look for views. There it is. We don't have to create it this time. It was created for us. And we are going to need to make HTTP responses. So let's just copy this guy, and we will paste this directly inside of here. And then we're going to define the index for our poll. So we're going to do it in exactly the same way we did all the other stuff. We'll say index, and we'll say request, and colon, and return, and we'll say HTTP response. And we'll keep it very simple. We'll just say you are in the polls index. And remember, we created the polls application before. And it's very important to understand that you can have multiple different apps inside of each of your projects. So this is just one of what could be many different apps. So now that we have that set up, now we have to jump over and attach the view to our URL. And we're going to do that over in the polls URLs directory, which is not here. So we're going to have to create it for ourselves. New file, and we'll call this urls.py, and OK. And there that guy is. And this is going to be very similar to our other one. So we're going to copy some stuff out of this. Not going to have an admin section, so we don't need to worry about that. So let's paste this inside of there. We're then going to import our views from the directory that we're currently in, and that's how we do that. And now we'll add a reference to the view and assign it to the root URL for our polls. So we might as well just come over here and get this guy. Whoops, wrong one again. There we are. Grab this guy right here, and we'll just copy that right there. Jump back over here, paste that inside of there, come down here. And then inside of here, we can go and assign our root directory. So we'll just go like this, caret and $, and then change this to views, index, and then name is going to be index. So we just made our own views and URLs part for our web application. Now all we have to do is point the root URL file to our polls application. And to do that, we're going to go into the sample site urls.py file, and we're going to import a new module inside of here that's going to allow us to reference the URL files that are in our polls application. So we'll say from Django fig urls import include. And then down inside of here, if we want to reference that, we will say URL. Once again, we are referencing the root of our polls application here. Raw text file, caret symbol, polls, / and then here we can use include to grab that specific URL. So we'll say include polls URLs, put that comma inside of there. And then we just need to test by running the server to see if that was all set up. So now we'll come over here to localhost 8000. We might have to restart the server, however. Polls. Oh, no, I didn't. You're in the polls index. All right, so that was how we were able to pull that outside polls application directly inside of our main project. Now we want to jump back into settings, and we'll come up here because we have a new installed application, and that is going to be our polls application. So we're going to say polls, apps, polls, config, and now we need to come down here and set up our database, and then after that we will create our model for our database, and we're going to be using the default SQLite database. And like I said previous in the last tutorial, it's very easy to set up any database using Django. And basically to use those other different databases, all you're going to need to do is change this line right here. And I'll show you the different ones. So it's just going to be backends. And if you want to use MySQL, you're going to type MySQL inside of there. And I'll get into this later. And we can have Postgres. And then also there is an Oracle option. Okay. But we're going to be using SQLite because that is what we use by default. And there's no reason to get anything complicated here in the beginning. The only thing is whenever you use those other different databases, you're more than likely also going to have to provide a user password and host. Like I said, in further tutorials, I'll get into that in detail. So now I'm going to jump over into models.py. Once again, this is in the polls directory. And I'm going to follow the polls example that is provided on the Django site because I think it's particularly pretty good. And then as the tutorial continues, we will create some other ones. So we'll go in here and we're going to need date time because we're going to be playing around with some different things with that module. And we're also going to be messing around with time zone. So Django utils import time zone, and now we're going to create our model. Now each model is a class with class variables that are going to represent fields in your database. And what we're going to do here is set the column names and data types, and then allow the database to create the tables afterwards. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a question as well as choices that are going to be tied into it. And you're going to have to go models.model, and then we can define a database column. So we're going to say that we're going to have question text be one of these guys inside of this table, and then we'll say models, and we will define that the data type is going to be a character field. Make sure you put a dot in between there like that. And we're also going to define the max length for this character field to be 200 in length. We're also going to define a publication date inside of here for when this question was created. And we're mainly doing this just so we have an excuse to play around with our database. And we can also come in here and, as an option, pass text in that's going to be more human readable. So, and we'll do some more stuff with that as well. So we'll say date published is what's going to pop up for the question. A little bit more information about exactly what this is. And then we will come down and also create another one for choice. So these are going to be the different choices as answers for our questions. So we'll say models, model. We'll say that we want to define that each choice is going to be related to a single question. So we'll say question equal to models, foreign key, question, and then on delete equal to models, cascade. And then we are also going to come in here and define text for our choice. So choice text equal to models dot, and this is going to be a character field as well. And we'll have the max length be equal to 200 as well. And then we're going to also provide for an option to vote for which is the most popular choice from the choices for each question. And this is going to be an integer field, and it's going to start off with a default value of 0. And now after we have defined the model, we need to include the app in our project, of course, and we did that inside of settings. So where would we go? We were up here, settings, there we are. So there is where we included that. And now what we can do is come over and notify Django that we have updated our model. So to do that, we're going to stop our server, and then we'll go Python 3, or Python if you're on Windows, manage py, make migrations, polls, and hit enter. And there we go. And you can see that it created the model for the choice as well as the questions. And you could also come in and say Python 3, manage py, migrate, SQL, migrate, polls, 0001, and hit enter. And what this is going to do is show you the SQL that will be used to create your tables. And you can look at that in detail if you'd like. And then after we have that all set up, we will go Python 3, manage py, migrate to create our database. And there you can see all those things came back as okay. So now we know that our database has been created. And there, if we zoom in, you can see everything that is all listed out there and everything that was all set up. Now what we're going to do is add data to our database using the Python shell. So to do so, you're going to come in and go Python 3, manage py, and shell. And there we are in the shell. What we want to do is import our modules or our models inside of here. So from polls.models, import question as well as choice. And we can display all of the questions that we have defined so far, which is none, but whatever, we're just going to do it. So we'll say question, objects, all, and you can see it's empty. So let's go and create a question. Now remember, we were messing around with time zones inside of our database, so we need to pull in that guy. So we'll say Django utils import time zone, and then we'll create a question. So we'll say Q question. We have to define question text, which is something we defined in our model, and we'll go what's new is a question we want to ask, and we'll also set the publication date equal to whatever the current time is, so time zone now. And if we want to save question to the database, we just go question save, and there, that's been saved. We can then get the question's ID, which is going to be equal to 1, because that's the only one that we have created so far. We can go and get the question's text by going dot and question text, just as we defined it. So question text, and what's new pops up there. We can also get the publication date, so pub date. And there you can see that's whenever I created this right here. And we could also come in and change the question. Just go view.question text is equal to, and we'll say what's up. And then anytime you make any changes to anything, you have to save it. And now if we go in here and go question object all, whoops, I meant to say objects all, you can see right there that that question comes back. However, this is not a whole lot of information. And if we would like to actually show the actual question inside of here, we're going to have to make some changes inside of our model. So let's shrink that guy down right there, and we'll jump over into models, this guy right here, and specifically come down inside of here, and we are going to return some text anytime that question is called. And one way to do that with an object is by using the string function. We'll define 2 underscores, string, 2 underscores, and then we'll have self inside of there. And then here what we'll do is we'll say anytime this is called, we want to send back question text so that we will actually see the real question displayed on the screen. And while we're inside of here, why don't we go and create a custom method for returning whether the question was published recently or not. So to do that, we can say something like was published recently, self. And then here what we're going to do is say return and get our publication date that we defined whenever this was created. And we'll say greater than or equal to time zone now, and we'll pick an arbitrary length, date time, delta, days equal to 1. Alright, and like I said, this is from the official Django tutorial, so this is just something they wanted to do. It's just an arbitrary way of calling this function. We know it's going to be called. Likewise, we can come down here and do the same things with our choices. So throw that inside of there, and instead this is going to be choice text, and you'll see here in a moment how that's going to change. And we'll save this, and then we'll jump over here and we will test all the changes we made. So here we are. And like I said, if you want to get inside of this guy, whoops, what did it do? If you want to open this up, this is the shell. We're going to type Python 3, manage py, followed by shell, but don't do that because we're inside of the shell right now. And we already imported the questions and the choices. And if we want to get a more detailed list of our questions, hopefully this works, otherwise I might have to restart the shell. So we'll say question, objects, all, up, didn't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump out of the shell, and we'll say quit, and then we're going to jump back inside of the shell, and then that should update for us. Jump back up inside of here, and let's go and import our question and choices. So from polls, models, import question and choice, and everything should be updated now. So whenever I say question, it should actually give me back the actual question inside of here. So question objects all, and you can see that it did. What's up? And if you're wondering where that came from, we can close this down. We did that right here. See? Right here. Question text is popping back. So that's how we did that inside of our models.py file. Let's go in here and do some more advanced stuff. Let's say we want to get the question with a matching ID. We're going to do the same type of thing. We're going to say objects, except this time we will say filter, and we'll say that we want ID 1. And if we do that, you can see that pops up there. We can get the question that starts with a specific string. To do that, we'll say question, objects, filter, and we'll say question underscore text, and then we're going to put 2 underscores to separate the relationships between this different type of information. So we'll say we're looking for question text that starts with the word what. Of course, we only have one question inside of there. You can see that what's up comes up there. We can get the questions published year. First, before we do that, we're going to have to come in and go from Django.utils and then import time zone. We can calculate our current year or get our current year by calling time zone.now and then specifically year after that. And now we'll be able to ask for a question that it was published in the current year. Again, we're going to use objects again. This time we'll use get, and we'll say published date, and specifically we want the year, so we're going to put 2 underscores there and then type in year, and we'll see if that is equal to our current year that we just created for ourselves. And you can see that it indeed was. Now what would happen if you come in here and try to call for something that doesn't exist? Again, we're going to say question objects dot .get, and you look for a question that has the ID of 2. There's only one in there. You can see that's kind of a mess. You get an exception raised anytime you do that. We'll get more into how to fix that stuff later on. We can also do a search for primary keys. So we can say question.objects.get and look for a primary key equal to 1. There you see what's up comes back again. We can also call for our special function. Was it published recently? To do so though, we'll have to say question is equal to and question.objects.get target the primary key 1, and then after that we can call the function that's inside of it. So was published recently, and you can see that comes back as true. We can also show choices that have been tied to our question. So question choice set and call for all the choices. You can see it comes back as empty. So let's come in here and add some choices. So we can say choice set and create a choice. And to create a choice, you have to define choice text. So here we're going to say not much is going to be one of those choices. And vote has a default value of, or votes has a default value of 0, but we're just going to put 0 inside of here just so we know. And we're going to do the same sort of thing here. For this next one, we will change this to the sky and leave votes as 0 again. And then we'll also come in here and we'll say the clouds. And there that is. Alright, so now we have some choices tied to our questions. And now we can come in once again and display all of our choices. Let's see here, do I have that? Yep, choice set all. And you can see there are all our choices. We could also come in and display the number of choices by choice set. And then we're going to call count on that. And we can see we have 3 choices tied to that one question. And let's go and show you another example. We can also be able to show choices for questions published this year. And again, we're going to use the double underscore to separate relationships. So we'll say choice, objects, filter. Again, we're looking for question. And we're going to look for publication date. And specifically, we are interested in the year equal to current year. And there you can see all those choices come back again. And we can also come in and delete a choice. So we'll go Q, choice, set, filter, and we'll look for choice text that is going to start with equal to, and then we'll say the clouds. That is an option, right? The clouds, yes. So now we grab that specific choice and then go c.delete, and that's going to delete that choice. Alright, so there you go guys. In the next part of the tutorial, I'm going to continue adding on to the polls example from the Django site. We're going to get it into a lot more detail, and we're going to bounce back and forth. And like always, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.